All right. So I guess we can get back to the question discussion once more. I hope there isn't any more power cuts for the remaining session. All right. So what we were discussing is that, yeah, we were having a look at which of these options satisfy the knowledge base, right? So let's go back. And we saw that the first option does not satisfy the knowledge base, right? Similarly, B, C, D also do not satisfy the knowledge base. Option E, on the other hand, does satisfy because Kia and Chile are abnormal because they are uh, kiwi birds and penguins respectively, and both of them cannot fly. And Tweety is not abnormal. Okay. Now, this is one model. Now, as I asked in the when I was framing the question, there is another possible option that could be a model. Okay. So, which of the remaining options do you think could be another model for the knowledge base or the augmented knowledge base?
Sir, H is a possibility.
Yeah, that's right. H could be a model because we do not know whether Tweety is abnormal or not, right? So we know for sure that Kia and Chili are abnormal, but
Yes, sir,
Tweety
but
may.
why is this one not the minimal one and the E is the minimal? That is not clear to me, sir.
Yeah, let's go back to the definition of minimal models. Just give me a minute. Okay, it seems like even I am a bit foggy on why this is a minimal model, but we know that. So the fourth question at least is clear, which was just with the same setting. We just asked that which of the following could be models. E and H, as you pointed out, could be the two models for this particular knowledge base that was given to us.
Sir, you have shown Tweety as not abnormal, and suddenly why we are switching it to abnormal in H?
We don't know
That means
whether
what?
Tweety is abnormal. No, we are not sure. We know that Kia and Chili are abnormal for sure. We do not
Okay.
know whether Tweety is abnormal.
Then how did you pick that in E as abnormal?
This could be a model, right? That this is what this particular question is
Are
asking.
you showing? Are you showing the whiteboard?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm showing a different board.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this was the other question basically. Here, although we have to note that not flies is what is the predicate that is shown over here, flies and not flies. And earlier we had abnormal and not abnormal, which is kind of complementary, but not exactly. Anyway, let's do one thing. Let's keep these two questions for now. Let's move on with the rest of the questions, and maybe we'll get back to these towards the end of the session. Okay.
Okay.
Answer Kamalakar's question. So he's asking why we decided that it's abnormal, why chili is abnormal, why tweet is abnormal in this case. While deriving in the whiteboard, we saw if it flies, it's not abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
If does not fly, we concluded it's not, it's abnormal.
Yeah, that is what is shown when there. Then how did you switch that tweety from abnormal to not abnormal to abnormal?
Those are the two
It was clearly
possibilities we can get. That's why we are just switching it over here.
Yeah,
okay.
it's not like we are commenting that one of them is exactly correct or one of them is exactly wrong. There are two possibilities, as Shiva pointed out. But
Okay.
yeah, we will get back to this question once more towards the end of the session. Uh,
Okay.
for now, let's move on with the rest of the questions so that we can maintain a bit of consistency. Okay, so for now, let's go to the fifth question, which is about default logic and circumscription. Okay, so this is kind of a recall based question. Okay, I'll let you go through the options once. I'm not creating a poll for this one. Uh, yeah, you can go through the options and let me know, or you can write in the chat box, or you can speak up. Which of the options do you think would be true? All right, so we have one answer in the chat box. So Mohan said that options B and C are correct. So let's go through the options one by one. Okay, so the first option says that in default logic, we minimize only the abnormal predicates. And the second option says that in default logic, we provide a mechanism for specifying explicitly which statement should be added to the knowledge base when it is consistent to do so. And out of these two definitions, B is something that is uh, concerned with default logic, okay, not the first one. The minimization of the abnormal predicates is something that is concerned with the circumscription, right? So option C is correct for circumscription and option B is correct for default logic, which tells us that options B and C are in fact the correct options. All right. Um, this was pretty straightforward. Should we move on to the next one?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, let's move on to the sixth question then, which is about event calculus. Okay, and here we are dealing with the discrete case of event calculus or discrete event calculus. Okay, so we are given that initiates a comma f comma t, where a is an action, f is a fluent, and t is a timestamp. Is given that initiates a f t is true when does a fluent f hold at time t1. Okay, and we are working with a discrete event calculus, and we have to select which of the options given to us among the 6 options would be true or would be relevant to the question asked. Alright, so once again I'll let you go through the options, um, and then we can have a discussion after a while. Right. Any thoughts on which of these options could be correct or incorrect?
Probably you may have to give some more time, sir.
Yeah, sure. We can take a couple of more minutes and then we can have a discussion. So one hint I'll give you is that when a fluent f holds at time t1, which basically means that it is true at that particular time, right? If I have to go back to the definition of holds at, okay, so a fluent f is true at time point t, okay, that is what holds at f comma t means, okay, and initiates eft means that event E occurs at time t and results in the fluent F becoming true after t. Another thing that you might need to recollect is what is clipping. Okay, so clipped T1 F T2 is basically what it means is a fluent F that was true is made false after sometime after or at time point T1 and before T2. Okay, so between T1 and T2 this becomes false, this fluent. Okay, I'll go back to the question and we can have a few more minutes and then we can discuss. Okay, so we have a vote for options A, D, and E. What do the others think? Uh, Remember, in order for, uh, as we saw in the definition of initiates, and the action has to happen, and as a result of that action, the fluent becomes true, right? And we are dealing with the discrete event calculus. So the timestamps would be some things like T1, T1 minus 1, T1 plus 1, things like that. Okay, so let's have a discussion. So let's go through the options one by one. Okay. So the first option is not actually correct because when an action happens at time t1, so if you remember, we saw the definition of initiates, right? The action has to happen, and then the fluent becomes true as a result, right? So the action happens at time t1 minus 1, then the fluent f will hold at time t1, right? And this is a discrete event calculus, so we can say t1 minus 1. There is nothing between tn minus 1 and t1. Okay. Um, Option C again is incorrect because if an action happens at time t1 minus 5, there is still a gap between t1 minus 5 and t1, and we need to know whether the fluent is true between that, right? And how can we assure that? We can assure that when we know that the fluent f is not clipped between the time interval, and that is what is said in option D, right? So when an action happens at time t1 minus 5 and the fluent is not clipped between t1 minus 5 and t1, then we can say that the fluent f holds at time t1. By similar reasoning, when f was true initially, that is not this, just simply stating this is not sufficient, so E is not correct. F was true initially and f is not clipped between t0 and t1. Okay, so assume t0 to be the very initial timestamp, and if um, f the fluent f will set to be will be set to be true at time point T1 if it was true initially, and it is not clipped between T20 and T1. Okay, so the three correct options are B, D, and F. Any doubts about this particular question?
Sir, can I explain the B option? Why is that correct?
Sure. So if you remember, the definition of initiates is basically initiate CFT is event E occurs at time T1 and results in the fluent F becoming true after T. Okay, in the discrete event calculus, it means that the fluent F is true at time T plus 1 and later, right? So if we apply that to our question over here, if the fluent F has to hold or be true at time T1, right? The action must have taken, or the event A must have taken place at T1 minus 1, right? So if we apply the reasoning that we just saw, at all times after T1 minus 1 plus 1, which is basically T1, fluent F will be true, right? Not simply from T1.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay. Any other doubts about this question? Should we move on to the next one? All right. Thanks, Arkudeep, for the thumbs up. Let's move on to the seventh question then. Okay. So the seventh question gives us a particular story narrative. Okay. The narrative is as follows. So Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine, a peaceful country. Invasion implies end of peace and beginning of war. The Russian forces bombed a maternity hospital. The hospital got destroyed as a result. It is a war crime to bomb civilian buildings. This is the narrative. Okay. Which of the following among these options over here, this 11 options, A to K, which of the following are true sentences in the domain theory? The narrative and the inferences. Okay, so all capital letters are universally quantified variables, and again note that we are working with the discrete event calculus or DEC. Okay, so I'll zoom in a bit. I'll let you go through the question setting and the options, and after maybe some time we can have a discussion on which of these answers or which of these options could be correct or incorrect. Alright, so we have one vote for options A, B, C, D, E, H, and I. Okay. Would anyone else also like to share their thoughts on which of these options could be correct or which of these could be incorrect? Or should we go ahead with the discussion? Alright, let's start the discussion and let's then see if there are any doubts remaining. Alright, so we start with time t0 as the initial time. Okay, and then we have the timestamps t1, t2, t3, so on and so forth. Okay, and if we have to write the story in chronological order, it would be something like, so the first statement was so we can first say that initially Ukraine was at peace, okay, which is t0, and then uh, invasion by Russia happens at time t1. Then this particular statement, the Russian forces bombed a maternity hospital. Okay, this can be represented by happens bombed Russia maternity hospital at timestamp t2. Okay, and then based on the other statements that were given to us in the narrative, the inferences we can draw is holds at war Russia and Ukraine. Basically means that Russia and Ukraine are now at war. This is at timestamp t3, and since now it is at war, the initial peace has been destroyed, right? So not holds at peace Ukraine, also at timestamp t3. Now, what are the things that you can uh, guess based on domain theory or agree with? Is that initiates invasion of invasion by x of y at war x comma y at timestamp t, which basically means that if x is invading y, this particular action initiates a war between x and y. Alright. Then another thing that you could frame based on whatever the inferences and the story that you just saw is that whenever initiates bombed x comma y, which means that when x bombs y is destroyed, right? So x bombing y initiates the destruction of y. Also makes sense. The eighth thing that you could say is terminates invasion of x comma y at peace y. So basically x invading y terminates the peace of y. And then happens bombed x comma y at timestamp t and initiates bombed x comma y and destroyed y. This implies that holds at destroyed y at timestamp t, right? Which basically means that if x bombed y at timestamp t and this initiated the destruction of y, then this implies that y would be in a state which is destroyed, right? Which is what the ninth thing over here is stating. Now, based on these and based on this t0 t1 assumption that we had made, let's go back and see which of these options could be correct or incorrect. Okay, so happens invasion of Ukraine by Russia at timestamp t1. This is true. Do you agree with me? A is correct. Am I audible? Alright. Similarly, happens bombed Russia maternity hospital at timestamp t2. This is also correct. We just saw T2 is greater than T1. This is also true. T3 is greater than T2. Also true. Initially at peace Ukraine is also true because we established that. Initiates invasion of X comma Y and at war X comma Y. This is also something we agreed with, right, in the domain theory part. Similarly, G is also true, which is basically saying that invasion of Y by X terminates the peace of Y, right? Also, bombing of Y by X destroys Y, so H is also true. Whole sat at war Russia Ukraine T3. This is also something that we saw is true, and not whole sat at peace Ukraine at timestamp T3. This is also true, and the last one is also true. So actually, all of these options are correct based on the story that we story narrative that was given to us and the domain theory sentences that we just formed. I'll go back to the.
There's nothing given in the termination, no?
It is given, right?
Where in the storyline, can we go back to story?
See, here only it is given, right? Uh, Invasion implies end of peace and beginning of war. So if we just focus on this part, invasion implies end of peace. This means that termination of the peace, right?
There is an implication, is it?
This is a story narrative. So don't confuse this with the implication that we usually talk about. But yeah,
Um,
this you could actually say that this implies it.
but where is, yeah, that is invasion implies end of peace. But where are we talking about end of the war?
We are not talking about the end of the war, no.
But the question is on the end of the war, no?
Uh, how are you concluding that?
Uh,
See, this terminates does not refer to the termination of the war. This termination is something that you recollect from the lecture slides, right?
oh, that,
Terminates,
yeah, that terminates invasion, no?
yeah, event T occurs at time T and results in the fluent F becoming false after T, right?
Yeah.
So if we relate it back to this example that we have, event
Oh,
over
this
here is the
terminates is not the termination story, no? It's an
no,
event. It's
no,
an
the
event.
event is invasion of Y by X, and the fluent is at peace, and this is becoming false after the invasion happens.
Oh, it becomes
Terminates is a
confusing.
predicate.
It becomes confusing at certain point.
Yeah, for that, it's recommended that you can always revisit the lecture slides and you will find these connections between things like terminates and initiates and whole sat or happens, right?
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you, sir.
all right. So all these options are correct, in fact.
So in this case, if it, suppose you are really selecting only 5 or 6 items, do you get a proportionate mark or it's wrong?
Um, I'm not sure. You have been answering the assignments. You tell me.
In assignments, we get a proportionate mark. Only thing is, if you choose a wrong choice, you will not get any mark.
That's
But
right.
if you really choose few of the right ones, then you will get a proportionate mark. I
That
hope that's the same way it applies in the exam also.
Ah, about exam again, I hope I guess that would be the same case, but once again, it's better to confirm it with the NPTEL team, or you could post it in the discussion forum.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, any doubts about this particular question that we just discussed? Could we move on to the next one?
Yeah, we'll move next.
All right. Thanks, Mohan. In case there are any doubts, please stop me and we can revisit the question. For now, let's go back to the, not go back, let's move on to the eighth question, which is about the frame problem in the context of event calculus. Okay, so this is also kind of a recall based question. You just have to select which of this option or options correspond to the frame problem in the context of event calculus. Okay, so once again, you can have a look at the options and then after a couple of minutes, we'll discuss which of them are true or correct. All right, so we have one answer. Vineet says option A is correct, which is in fact true. Option A is the one that describes what the frame problem is in context of event calculus. It is the problem of deciding which fluents remain or become true at future time instances, right? And the other three options are incorrect because if we revisit the frame problem, it is the challenge of representing the effects of actions in logic without having to explicitly represent a large number of intuitively obvious non-effects, right? So a simplified version of this, and by the way, I would highly recommend that you visit this particular link later on to know a bit more about what frame problem actually is. The three options, the later three options B, C, D are incorrect because the problem of determining effects of stochastic actions is not relevant. The problem of determining which actions are needed to make a fluent true is also not something that the frame problem deals with. The problem of deciding which fluents remain or become true at future in time instances, right? This is what frame problem deals with in event calculus. Okay, so option A is true. Should we move on to the next question?
Yes, sir. We'll move next question.
Okay, thanks Mohan. Thanks Mr. Kamlakar for the thumbs up. Okay, let's move on to the ninth question then, which is something like this. So let P stand for the statement Putin is going to attack Ukraine. What you have to tell is what does the statement K Putin, not K Biden, and not P represents. Okay, so this K, if you recall, just tells us whether this agent, here in case it's Putin, here in case it's Biden, whether this agent knows or does not know something. Okay, all right. So this is also a fairly simple question. I'll give you maybe a few minutes and then we can discuss which of the options is. All right. So we already have an answer. Mr. Kamlakar says it's option D. Uh, what do you think? What the others? Okay, Mohan says it's option C. But Mohan, if you look carefully into it, right, we are given that Putin knows that Biden does not know that not P. Yeah, not P formula is true. Not P, right? So option C says Putin does not know that Biden knows P, which is not exactly what is given to us in the statement, right? Actually, option D is the correct option because it tells us that Putin knows that Biden considers it possible that P, right?
Maybe direct from the notes,
Yeah.
lecture notes.
Not Biden, not P. So yes, Biden.
So the correct option in this case would be option D. Okay. So this is also from the lecture notes. I would recommend you to revisit the lecture notes in case there is any remaining doubt. Um, shall we move on to the next question then?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then let's go to the 10th question, which deals with the muddy children puzzle. Okay. So there are 4 children, Aman, Bindu, Charu, and Deepthi. And Aman and Deepthi are muddy, and the others are not muddy. And what is the minimum number of times the father has to repeat the question for the children to state whether they are muddy or not? This is also kind of straight from the lectures, but by the way, are you familiar with the muddy children problem or should we revisit the puzzle once more?
Familiar, sir, but trying to understand the reasoning is very confusing for me.
Okay.
I understood the problem, but coming to the answering part is confusing.
Let's do one thing. Let's start with a simple case then. let's say when only one of the children is muddy. Okay, that is not what the question tells us, but let's consider the simple case when one of the children is muddy. Okay, so k basically represents the number of children that is muddy, and suppose there are 4 children, okay, a, b, c, and d, and one of them is muddy. Okay, and the puzzle tells us that when they are asked uh, whether or not they are muddy, they can answer yes or no only for themselves, but they can't answer whether any of the others are muddy or not. Okay, and let's say their father announces that at least one of them is muddy. Okay, so suppose B is the one that is muddy. Okay, so when A looks at B and C and D, he will know that B is the one that is muddy, but he will not say, uh, and he also knows that at least or only one of them is muddy, right? So he will know that he himself is not muddy. So he will say no. Similar example for C and D. On the other hand, when B looks at A, C, and D, he will see that none of A, C, and D are muddy. And since he knows that only one child is muddy, he will conclude that he himself was muddy and he will say yes. Right? So is the K equals to 1 case a bit clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's talk about the K equals to 2 case. Okay, so once again we have 4 children who are Aman, Bindu, Charu, and Deepti. So A, B, C, D. Let's call this the first question. Okay,
So will the children be aware that only two of them are muddy? That information be given to them?
right. So if you go to the epistemic logic slide, lecture slides, where this problem was stated, let's just revisit that once. So I'll just go through the briefly go through the prerequisites or the setting of the puzzle. So there are n children, n is 4 in our case. They are playing together. During play, some k, which could be 0, 1, or 2, or 4, or 3, of the n children get their foreheads dirty. Okay, and a child can see everyone else's forehead but cannot observe directly whether there is mud on his or her own forehead. And no child reveals what she sees to anyone. The father, what he does is, the father comes to them and announces, at least one of you has mud on your forehead. And then he keeps asking, does any one of you know whether you have mud on your own forehead? Okay. So what he will announce is, at least one of you has mud on your forehead. And the conclusion will be, the first k minus times the question is asked, they will all say no. At the kth time, all the k children with that have muddy foreheads will deduce somehow that they are the ones with muddy foreheads, and they will say yes. Okay, so now let's go back to our problem. So the first time they are asked who has a muddy forehead, they will all say no. All right, do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Now okay, so initially every child can see that at least one other child is muddy, right? So Aman and Deepthi can see that one child is muddy, and Bindu and Charu can see two of the children are muddy. So let's say Aman and Deepthi are the ones that are muddy, because that is what is given to us in the question, right? Aman and Deepthi are muddy and the others are not muddy. So let's color Aman and Deepthi in a different color.
Please shift to whiteboard, sir.
Thanks for pointing that out. So Aman and Deepthi are muddy. Okay. Now, when they are first asked whether they are muddy or not, so Aman sees that B and C are not muddy, D is muddy. Okay. B sees that Aman and Deepthi are muddy and C is not muddy. And similarly for the others as well. Okay. Now, after the father announces, the announcement does not help, as every child knows that there is at least one muddy child, right? Since we know that there are two muddy children, those two children who are muddy, they can see at least one child who is muddy, right? The other one. So Aman can see at least Deepthi who is muddy, and Deepthi can see at least Aman who is muddy. And the other two children, Bindu and Charu, can see both of the children who are muddy. So when the question is asked if any child knows whether he or she is muddy for the first time, if there had been only one muddy child, the muddy child would have seen everyone else is not muddy, right? When we discussed the k equals to 1 case, they could have easily concluded that uh, who is muddy or who is not muddy, right? And then they would have given the yes answer. But that is not what is happening in this case, right? So in the first question, they will not get the correct answer. When the question is asked the second time, Aman can conclude that he must be muddy, right? Because Aman can now see that B and C are clean.
Here itself they are seeing, right? Sir?
This I have drawn,
Here
but they are not.
itself,
I've drawn it like that, but initially they are not seeing it, right? Because initially they are not aware of the announcement itself.
we just said Aman is able to see Deepthi, so he is able to see at least one person.
Mm-hmm.
And since B and C are not muddy, so he can directly say his face is also muddy,
Yeah, that is what he can conclude, right?
right?
So let's go back. That is what which is we are saying over here, right? That Aman concludes that he must be muddy, and because this is because he sees that Deepthi alone is muddy, right? So which means
Okay,
that Aman is muddy. So by similar reasoning, Deepthi will also conclude that she is the one that is muddy, right?
okay,
So when the question is asked the third time, they all will know which of them are muddy and not muddy, right? So then they will all say yes or no, which will be corresponding to the uh, correctly assigning them to muddy or not muddy. Okay.
maybe in the problem they are not given the information that two of them are muddy. That's why they repeatedly keep asking, is anyone more muddy, like that.
You mean whether the children themselves know who of them are muddy?
The children themselves does not know how many of them are muddy.
Yeah, they don't know to begin with. They can conclude it when the public announcement is made.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the prisoner hat riddle. That's
Sorry, Vineet, can you come again?
this muddy puzzle. This is like just like the prisoner hat riddle.
Okay.
Riddle, everyone is different height. So when they stand in a line, only they can see the people who are in front. So in that puzzle, it will be clear who is able to see whom.
Mm-hmm.
I, I think
Vineet, I think you muted yourself.
uh, who just asked the question just now was confused about that. I think.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we can. So those of you who are interested can check out the problem that or puzzle that Vineet was just mentioning. And okay, but is this question clear? Any doubts about this question? I'll go to the explanation once more. You can read the. Okay, Vineet, thanks for sharing the link. I guess it is the link to the problem that you were talking about.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that. People, those of you who are interested can visit that. As for this problem, is the explanation clear? Any confusion till now?
Is there a general formula, sir? Suppose if it is n, and how many times the question should be repeated?
Yeah, we just saw that, right? So if there are n children and
Uh,
k of them are muddy,
uh-huh.
then k minus 1 times they will say no, and the kth time they will answer correctly whichever of them have muddy foreheads.
But here it is not working that way. Now, now four children and two are muddy. K minus one means one, but here our answer is three. No,
No, no, no. K minus 1 times they will say no, right? So the first two times they are asked, they will say no, right? For the third time they are asked, they will say yes.
so K minus one times they say no,
Yeah.
and they will tell yes. So four minus one, third time they will tell yes. Huh? That's the way you should really calculate based on the generalized formula.
Okay, let me go through it once more. So we have four children, right? N is 4.
Yeah.
Okay. K could be 0. K of the n children get their foreheads dirty. Okay, in this case we have 2. The first K minus 1 times, they will say no.
Two minus one, no.
Uh-huh.
So he says two minus one times he says no, means three times they will tell yes. Third time, how do we, it doesn't fit there. The formula doesn't really work there.
Uh-huh. Let's go through the explanation once more. Okay, so initially we have, let's just go to the question once. We have four children. Okay, that's fine. Two of them are muddy and the others are not muddy. Fine. What is the minimum number of times the father has to repeat the question for the children to state whether they are muddy or not? Okay. Okay, so initially every child can see that at least one other child is muddy. Okay. After the public announcement, in this case, the public announcement does not help as every child already knows that there is at least one muddy child. Yeah, that is true. The announcement simply states that there is at least one muddy child, and they already know that there is at least one muddy child. Okay. So when the question is asked if any child knows whether he or she is muddy or not for the first time, if there had been only one muddy child, the muddy child would have seen everyone else is not muddy and concluded that he or she is muddy and said yes. That is true, but here we don't have one muddy child, we have two muddy children. Every child replies that they do not know if they are muddy or not the first time the father asks the question. That is understood. When the question is asked the second time, after that, Aman concludes that he must be muddy. Okay, so basically this is something that is the Mhm.
And it's not always true, say, because some child could tell two and some child could tell one, no?
No, no, no. Why no? Why will a child say two? No.
The child who does not have a mud can obviously see the other two children are having that.
Yeah, but that child will not say whether the other children have muddy foreheads or not. They can only say whether they themselves are muddy or not. That is the only way they can answer.
Okay. But getting back to the formula, does it really apply rightly?
Let's look at the lecture slides then. Maybe we'll see what exactly was meant over there. Okay, so this was discussed in the second time they will say yes. So the option that I've written in the question is actually wrong. Three, it's not supposed to be three, it's supposed to be two.
Two, yeah.
Yeah, that's where the issue was coming from. But the logic is still consistent. Yeah, so
Logically speaking, the answer is right, but by formula wise, it does not fit in there.
no, it still fits. Three is not the correct answer over here. Two is the correct answer.
No, but the explanation shows that three is the right answer, no?
The explanation is wrong. That's what I'm telling.
The wrong seems to be right, the way what it is written.
And yeah, it's written that way. But the thing is that when they're asked the first time, they will say no. But the second time they are asked, they will conclude that which of them are muddy, whether they themselves are muddy or not, and they will say yes.
No, 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 no. I'll put up the scenario like this. The father is asking one of the muddy child. Say
He asks
no.
all of them simultaneously, and all of them
No.
simultaneously answer.
Okay, he is asking all of them simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the question is, how many of you are having mud? Is it?
No, the question is whether you are having a muddy forehead.
The question
Can
is,
I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Uh, I think here uh, the trick is about knowledge. I mean, who knows what? When the father asks a question, something will become apparent. When everybody say no, then they conclude something uh, regarding that everybody said no.
Yeah, that
So when
is.
everybody said no, then B knows. Whoever had the muddy head knows what's going on. So next time that person might say yes.
Yeah, that's right. I perf- fully agree with you, and thanks for your thoughts, Vineet. Uh, that's absolutely right. So this question deals with, or this puzzle, in fact, deals with how addition of knowledge uh, can figure into the problem. Okay. So just for the sake of uh, going over or summing up the conclusion, I'll go through the explanation once more. Okay, so basically the question is we have four children, okay, A, B, C, and D. Two of them are muddy, okay. The first time they are asked the question, all of them say they are not muddy, okay. And this is because the announcement that is made, which says that at least one of them is muddy, is not helpful to them because they already see that one of them is muddy. At least one of them is muddy. Okay, so the announcement doesn't add on any information to their uh, understanding of the situation or the surrounding that they are dealing with. But once all of them say no, the second time they're asked the question, the ones that are muddy, they realize that they are muddy and they change their answer to yes. Right? So the second time the
no,
father
no.
asked the
I just
question.
want to interrupt there only.
Okay,
See, I'll put up the scenario the way what I understood is your four children are standing and the father is asking the question. Okay,
okay,
who is having the muddy forehead? Okay, to all the four common question.
yes.
So all
Not
the
who is
four,
asking, whether you are having, yes or no. It's a yes or no
yeah,
question.
yeah, whether you are having a muddy or not.
Yes.
So four of them are telling no.
Mm-hmm.
Then second time you are asking the question, what additional information the children are getting it to answer differently? Because still they are ignorant, because the question is posed the way first time it was posed. And the status of mind of all the four still remains the way it was there in the first question. Why do you
Look,
expect them to change the answer?
if you go back to
Okay,
the
okay.
question,
Can I tell?
Yeah, yeah. Go
sure, go ahead.
Okay.
ahead.
Uh, what's your name actually? Can I?
Mohan. Mohan.
Mohan.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't have mud on your head, and if I have mud on your head, if someone asks us, we just say no, because I don't know if I have mud on my head, and if you don't, and you don't know. But no, when I see that, see you don't have mud, and you said no, then I realize that oh, I am the one having
No,
mud on my
no,
head.
no, 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 no. You don't have that advantage of my answer giving a prompt to you. What what Saul was telling that when the question is put to all the four together, there is no such advantage of my answer helping you to correct your answer.
No, why won't it help, right?
Yeah, that's how my scenario is like that. You're just keeping the four fellows standing there and you're putting up the question.
No,
See,
actually,
to
there is
begin
an
with,
assumption here. Assumption in one of the slides that they are all intelligent and perfectly able to answer any logic or something. Yeah,
yes,
assumption.
yes,
I think this is a crucial uh, thing to solve this puzzle. Actually,
yeah, that is part of the puzzle statement.
yes, yes.
Now, if you're asking the
They are
question one
perceptors
after,
intelligence, so they can uh,
no, if you're
detect
putting
that.
if you're putting up the scenario that the question can be answered one after another, then it is okay. I can go with you. But if the question is put up together for everybody, then there's no such advantage of one's answer helping the other to infer different answer.
So, Mohan, I will maybe suggest that you think a bit more about it. Have you visited the lectures that professor had, where the professor has talked
I
about
had
mud?
the same doubt only. That's why I spoke.
Okay, so
Sir,
My
my
time and
understanding is, sir, my understanding is the children will not know how many number of children are having muddy faces. If we take that situation, only the repeated questioning means they'll be thinking, okay, there are some more muddy children, hence the father is asking. If you think in that lines, maybe it may help us.
yeah, I
yeah,
think like that. Yeah.
yeah, that is correct. Thanks for your inputs, Mr. Kamlakar.
All right, let's move. Then I will read it again. Probably I have to reorient.
Sure. Yeah, maybe revisit the lectures once more
All right.
and look at the question once more. I'll correct the answer in my slides that I've uploaded in the drive folder. Um, yeah, that's it.
All right.
Okay, so
Sir, whatever information notes you are showing
mhm.
on the white typed one about this question, can you share that notes?
Which one?
You just show reading some lecture notes like the muddy.
This one or
No,
the
no,
Jamboard?
not the lecture. Jam.
This is
There
in
is a typed
the
one.
This
Right,
one?
right. This one. Yes, sir.
this in
This
the
one.
lecture slide.
Sure, I will. I can share this as well. I'll append it to the lecture slides itself.
Sir,
And
is this not there in the lecture slide?
no, this is not in the lecture slide.
This he has prepared for his.
No,
Uh,
this is actually something that Bhaskaran sir had prepared previous year, so I am using that.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, sure, I can do that. I'll add that explanation to the lecture slides as well. Not the lecture slides, the question answer slides for the live session, and I'll upload it once more.
Okay.
Okay, so that brings us to an end of the questions for this week. But since we had an issue with the power cut, I'll revisit the questions uh, that we initially discussed. So Trisha, thanks for your question. We will be uploading it in the YouTube channel that uh, the video will be uploaded, the recordings will be uploaded in the YouTube channel, and this question answer slides that will be uploaded in the Drive folder. So if you go to Swayam, there is this section called problem solving session. You can click over there and that will lead you to a Excel sheet. Okay, and that sheet will have a link to a presentation folder and the videos for every week. Okay, so these slides are uploaded in this presentation folder. There's one common folder where all the slides for every week are uploaded. So you can have a look at that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so those of you who want to stay back, they can stay back because I'll be going over the questions, the initial few questions that we discussed once more. And also we had to resolve the minimal extension problem that we were discussing in two of the questions, question 3 or 4, I remember. So yeah, let's first go to the first few questions, maybe first 2-3 questions, and then we'll go back to the question where we had a doubt. Just give me a moment.